Hey there! I'm Felix, and I just hit Grandmaster, almost exclusively playing Loki, so I decided to make a beginner's guide that might help other newer or lower ranked Loki players. While I can't guarantee my guide is the best guide out there, I've tried to make it as beginner friendly as possible by listing each ability and how I use them. Let's start. Loki has 6 abilities: Backstab, Deception, Doppelganger, Devious Exchange, Regeneration Domain, and God of Mischief. I'm going to cover all of these, but first, I'm going to start with his primary fire. The official description of his primary fire is a little confusing, so I've tried to make my description simpler. His primary fire is a small projectile which does splash damage and healing, and you get 10 shots before needing to reload. It does 40 health and 30 damage per shot, but the splash damage and healing does fall off depending on how close the projectile is to the target when it impacts either the target or the map. This means you should try to aim for direct hits. This also means that you usually want to be roughly a medium distance away from your teammates, because if you're too close, such as standing in the choke with your team, it can mess up your escape abilities, such as Deception. On the other hand, if you're too far away, you'll miss too many shots in your team and they'll keel over quickly. That's all there is to his primary fire, so let's move on to abilities. His first ability is called Backstab, and it's kind of pointless. Essentially, your melee does extra damage if you melee somebody in the back, but the total damage only adds up to 45 damage from one melee, so the only real use case for it is if a Psylocke or other flanker dives into you and they already have almost no health. In this scenario, you can spin around and smack them in the back and they might die, so I wouldn't really worry about this ability too much. His second ability is Deception. When you activate it, you get infinite invisibility and leave behind a clone of yourself. You can use your abilities Devious Exchange or Doppelganger without canceling your invisibility. However, attacking using his other abilities or receiving damage cancels your invisibility. It's also worth noting that its 15-second cooldown doesn't start until the ability is cancelled. Deception can be really good when used right, but it's a little tricky. There are two main uses I've found. Firstly, if you want to use your ultimate on a character in the enemy team but can't get eyes on them, you can use Deception to sneak into a better position to find the enemy you want to copy. The other more common use is escaping. Escaping with Deception can be difficult because most of the time, when you activate it, enemies immediately shoot you out of it. Because of this, I recommend jumping off ledges, then activating it, because you can control your trajectory and quickly get away from the clone you left behind, which enemies will then shoot at that instead of you. Similarly, when a flanker dives you, such as Psylocke, using her dash, they'll end up behind you. This is another good time to use Deception because it gives you a second to move away from the clone you've left behind, so they're less likely to shoot you out of it. Next up is Doppelganger, which is incredibly important to playing Loki. Doppelganger enables Loki to place up to 2 clones of himself at a time. If you have 0 clones in your, clone storage, then it takes 12 seconds for each clone to regenerate and for the ability to be available again. If you don't keep your clones up, you should play literally any other character because Loki by himself does almost no damage or healing. I cannot stress this enough. If a Jeff were to walk out, spit out 6 bubbles, and then AFK for the rest of the match, he'd have more healing than you if you spent the entire match healing your teammates by yourself with no clones. Your clones are also incredibly important because Loki only has 10 ammo before he has to reload, so you'll find yourself reloading frequently. So, if you have time to set up, such as during defense on payload maps, I like to place one clone in a safe spot where it can heal my team but not be seen by enemies, and a second clone that can heal my team as well as see and damage enemies. This works well on defense because your setup time will allow Doppelganger to regenerate, and you'll be able to place another clone in a safe spot if your second clone gets destroyed quickly. I've also seen many Lokis place clones close together, but this isn't always the best play. This is because enemies will be able to destroy your clones and eliminate you with relative ease if they have to just turn a corner and you're all right there. If your clones are in different spots, they have to pick one clone at a time to attack. There are also a couple more benefits to this that I'll get into later. Now, onto Devious Exchange. Devious Exchange allows you to teleport to one of your clones within a 30-meter radius and take its place. Devious Exchange has a 15-second cooldown. This is possibly one of the best escape abilities in the game. There are so many different scenarios in which you can use it. For example, if you want to be really aggressive, place a clone behind your team to heal them like you normally would and push up. If you start to take damage, you can activate Devious Exchange and you'll teleport to the nearest clone. You don't even have to be looking at them. But if you do look at a clone, you will teleport that one regardless of how close the other clone is, unless the clone you're looking at is out of range, in which case you'll teleport to the other one in range. Or, if you need to escape a flanker, just teleport to one of the clones. This is one of those scenarios in which you don't want a clone to be close to you, however you can also quickly use Dopple Ganger to teleport away to it. It just takes longer. This next ability is, in my incredibly biased opinion, one of the best non-ultimate abilities in the game. Regeneration Domain is an ability that creates a healing field where you are standing, and your clones will also drop a healing field, which enables you to spawn up to 3 of these healing fields at once. However, if the rune above the healing field is broken, the healing field will disappear. Regeneration Domain has a 25-second cooldown, and if the rune is not broken, it will last for 5 seconds. The healing field heals for 100 health a second, and it converts 30% of incoming damage into healing. What this means is that you survive almost anything within the range of the healing field. One notable exception, and I think there are others, but there are very few, is Jeff's ult, because he can just eat your teammates and take you all away. Some ultimates, such as Magneto's ultimate or Namor's ultimate, will break the healing field upon impact, but you will survive. Other ultimates, like Psylocke's, don't target the field, meaning you can literally stand there AFK and wait for her ultimate to end. Unless, of course, the rune is broken by one of the other enemies. There are 3 main ways I use Regenerative Domain. The first is to save myself from a flanker if I failed to escape or kill them with my other abilities. The second is, of course, to drop it when an ultimate is targeted at me or my teammates. And the third is to heal critical tanks. You can try to use it on DPS, but they're usually too squishy and die before you can deploy it on them unless you're standing next to them already. Speaking of deployment, something that makes this ability so strong is that you can use Doppelganger to throw a clone next to your teammates in these scenarios, because, as mentioned earlier, your clones will also drop a regenerative domain field when you do. This is so incredibly powerful, even compared to regenerative domain's other uses, because the enemy team, which is also presumably low, will commit to killing your tanks when you swoop in with the field. Enemy tanks, having used their abilities and HP in the fight, like your own tanks, will quickly keel over. And even if the enemy tanks aren't low or still have defensive abilities, they have to choose to either run away and wait out the field, or stop damaging your tanks to break the rune above the field. In some cases, they might even try to damage your tanks in the field and ignore the rune, which of course will convert 30% of their damage into healing for your tanks. And that's on top of the 100 healing per second that your tanks are already receiving from the healing field. Loki's final ability is, of course, his ultimate, God of Mischief. This ultimate lets you copy any of the heroes in the lobby and immediately gives you their ultimate. You just need to be able to see the hero that you want to copy. Keep in mind, if you need to reposition after turning into another hero, using the ultimate of the hero you copied will extend your ult duration, so don't be afraid to take your time if need be. There are 2 ways I use this ult. Option A, and the most used option, is to duplicate one of the other healers in the game so that I can use their ultimate ability to heal my teammates. This can actually be kind of broken because you can get, say, 2 Luna Snow ultimates back to back in teamfights. Option B is to copy a DPS or tank for a high damage or otherwise really powerful ultimate. Option A is pretty straightforward. The best support to copy in my opinion is Luna Snow. You immediately get her ult, which does tons of healing and has a damage boost. She is a very, very clear pick, but another runner-up, for example, would be Mantis's ult. If you choose to duplicate a DPS, Hela is the most obvious pick most of the time, but in a higher rank she generally is banned every single game. But another notable pick that is also banned sometimes, but less often, is Psylocke, and Doctor Strange. What I generally do is drop my healing field before using my ultimate if I'm going to duplicate a non-support hero. I find that if I don't do this, my team dies the majority of the time during my non-support ultimates, which means we can lose points even if I get, say, a 3k on Hela. Anyways, that's about it. Those are all of Loki's abilities and an explanation of how I use them. If you liked this video or it helped you out, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can comment below. I also stream to Twitch, link down below. On Twitch, you can watch me utilize the guide, or you can ask questions live. Thanks for viewing.